Hello, Something Guys and Gals. This is Something Guy 912 back with you for the Odd Architecture series into the last map of the Route Kanal chapter, known as D1 underscore canals underscore 05. You might think that that is a mistake by me, but as it turns out, there is no D1 underscore canals underscore 04, as it was cut, likely placed far later into the campaign as D3 underscore C17 underscore 08, a map that I cannot wait to cover when we get there. But we'll still have plenty more to cover, like with this map, and many more to follow. Again, this series I tackled the level design of the map in regards to how realistic it would be, down to the minute details like the placement of stickers and even NPC placements in relation to architecture as well. So with that, let's finish Route Kanal. Alright, and now that we are in game, we can just start right off. You go up this ladder, and as you can see from the top, there's this, what seems to be a latch, and clearly the ladder doesn't reach to it, so why it stops here is just, again, really contrived. And then not to mention the fact that this ladder is kind of held up by these weird, I call them metal balustrades in my notes. I don't really know how else to explain it, because I guess it's supposed to hold up this ladder, but that's basically all it's doing. And then, you know, beyond that, we also have the peculiar choice of the concrete architecture once more, like these weird archways. You have this, like, you know, like right angle pieced off concrete, but then, you know, you have this gap here for the latch, and then all this. It's just, again, more over, it feels more over designed, as it is more apparent throughout the canal section. And then we go back here. Normally, yeah, there's two manhacks that show up and they jump at you. I'm gonna have to take care of them because they're extremely loud in the recording. Now on this backside here, you have this gap, and what's interesting as a little Easter egg is if you can throw a grenade up here, I might flood this. Yeah, I did. Damn it. Just give me a moment. I can do this. Oh, keep messing up. And then, yeah. So if you throw a grenade up there, you kill not a CP officer, but a Combine soldier. You can see it from the top right corner. It said Combine soldier. But, yeah, there's a Combine soldier that's up here. And I don't know why it's a Combine soldier. And because of the fact that, you know, you can only really kill him if you throw a grenade, it kind of stands to reason the grenade secret in the prior map, where you can get an early grenade, and kind of makes me, like, wonder if that was the reason for that grenade being there, is so you can kill a Combine soldier that was placed up here, but that seems way too cryptic of a reason. It's just interesting that it's a Combine soldier. That they put there as presumably a spawn point to summon a Mayan hack that would come through on that gap. So, yeah. And then proceeding on, we go through these canals. Yep, windows come in. We have to deal with these CP officers some more, but obviously I have no target on, so they don't give a shit. Over here, there's not really much to say. Like, probably stand to reason this would be barred off, because this would probably get filled up with more water. To the right here, you have this ladder portion that was broken off, which kind of leads you to believe that somebody would go down here to check out this canal, despite the fact that it basically, there's nowhere for anyone to go, because you have this area that's blocked off by this fence, and there's no way to get back up here, as well as just the dead end over there. So a little bit odd that there's a ladder here to imply that somebody would be working on this. So we jump up there. We go into this corridor where we have more manhacks, which again I have to take care of because they're loud, extremely loud and annoying. Got that. And then through that we have another very odd procession of geometry for a presumed, like, canal system. So to the left here you have this, like, awkward side room with these barnacles and whatnot. Not sure what this was supposed to serve. and then to the designated path, you have this, like, half concentric hallway that, you know, ends here, and then you have to go up this ladder, but the ladder just leads you to this ledge that you can't access unless you know, traipse through these boards and whatnot. And it's really the only way you can get to the other side of this portion of the concentric hallway. And then, obviously, there's no ladder on the other side, so there's no way to get to the other side if you drop down. So what this served, I have no clue, because supposedly these hallways being, like, man-sized, and the height of them would imply they would expect people to walk through these, but obviously there's essentially no, like, there's no way for people to get to the other side. It's very clearly serpentine, like, designed for a serpentine style, as that will become a word I'll be using more often as we get through. And more to the point of that, we go through this hallway, and as you can tell, it just immediately drops down, and it's just this stiff drop into these, like, I call them stairway ledges. So again, it's just a little bit odd. It kind of reminds me of the awkward drop from that little stairway into the vent section in D1_Canals 03. It kind of reminds me of that in a lot of ways. I mean, not to the same extremity, but still. And then we go down here, and obviously you pass through, you come across a civvy with a SMG. He tells you, oh, it's you, it's Freeman. I'm just gonna... Nope, I don't want to hear you talk. So, you know, we take care... Well, you know, he talks to you and whatnot, and then, you know, you see this whole portion up here. Now, obviously, all this fence, all this rubble and whatnot was probably put here by rebels. So this area probably was, like, before the Combine came over, was probably filled with water. And again, I have Commander S.V. Riley's video as kind of an interpretation of what this likely looked like before the Combine took over. And again, I have disagreements with the water level, specifically, of that area. Because if we keep going on, if this is supposed to be filled with water, we'll crawl through here, and then, you know, the shells will drop, and then immediately to the right of that shell that just dropped is a tanker. Just a tanker to the right here, in an area that would likely be filled with water. So, yeah. Either this isn't filled with water, and this area is just, like, open, like, as open as it is for no reason, or it is, and this boiler is just, or this tanker is just constantly getting flooded. Like, either scenario is just as silly. And then we go through here, you know, I have to deal with a bunch of head crabs and zombies. I think this is actually the proper introduction of zombies, or I guess reintroduction if you played Half-Life 1. And now, this area is obviously supposed to be like a rebel commune that's been essentially bombarded by these shellings and whatnot, but the design of this area is kind of nonsensical and not exactly helpful for rebels, considering it's a very serpentine design. It just kind of goes one way. Like this section where the rebel gets, you know, humped by a head crab is essentially a complete dead end. Like, there's nothing here to suggest, like, a rebel would live here or, like, you know, station here. It's just a room that's just blocked off, just for you to see this dude get eaten by, or get, you know, taken control by a head crab. So, moving on, we'll go through here. We'll go through this whole bridge. There's more, you know, zombies that spawn in. And then the next thing that, well, maybe I should bring up this other thing before we bring up the electrified container and the fence, but the back here, this zombie appears. Now, if you remember, we had to go through back here, and there was nothing of the sort. There was no zombies at all. So this zombie would have had to literally appear out of nowhere for him to break this part of the wall. So yeah, that's another example of odd architecture in relation to NPC placement. Now, let's go mention the electrified or charged container. Now, obviously, it's charged by these wires, and the through line of them would make sense for it to be electrified this way. And I'm going to mention Freeman's Mine 2 again, because in that video, Ross Scott literally edited the map to make it so he could destroy like a power box that was hanging up on the very top of these rungs of power poles, so you could go through this much safer.
I'm gaining rats. I don't have time for this shit. All right, return to sender. Yeah, safety first, assholes.
All right, and then moving on from that, before we go into the container itself, we'll go out here because there was something that did catch my eye, was the out of bounds section of this rail with the signal switches. And the design of this looks very eerily similar to the setup in D1 Canals 01, such that I'm convinced they probably just kind of copy-pasted it on here since it was just, you know, easier that way for, you know, what would be just basically an out-of-bounds area. So we'll go through the container, another shell, more zombies spawn in, we'll go out through here. Before we go and meet with the lady in the airboat, I wanted to mention this peculiar choice of ledge. I don't know why it's designed this way. It's just really silly how it's angled this way. Not be helpful in the slightest. And then we go over here, and you know, she talks to us about like the airboat is ready and all that, and we can ride it. But I'm not going to ride it because no clipping and flying is much faster than being on the airboat, especially when I'm trying to go over the map design of these games. So there's nothing here that's really out of the ordinary, as far as I could tell. What is interesting is a lot of these like tunnels that you're gonna go through on the airboat will have these I don't know, like I guess meshes for like rainfall to fall through, I guess, and like some of them will have meshes, but some of them will just be completely open, as we will discover a little bit later into this map. So we're going to fly out through here, and as it is apparent with not only the fact that the water is radiated, but it's also at an extremely low level, is another implication of the Combine's effect that it has on Earth. Like, this is at least the second major implication of that. The third will be in Highway 17. And as far as I can tell, like, the architecture of the natural ground and the water is alright, but I feel like it also suffers from just random junk just being thrown higgledy-piggledy. Like, yeah, barrels, like, that makes sense. Some metal meshes, I don't know what these are called, but, like, those make sense, but then you have things like, oh, more pieces of wall to a building, or, like, way over here is a boiler, for example. It's just, they just kind of used whatever assets they had to just essentially fill this area with random junk and just kind of give you a breeze of like handling the controls of the airboat. So moving on, before we go and deal with the switch to open the gate, you have this this weird, like, I don't know what you would call, like, water flow design. And what's interesting is part of the concrete is clipping into the ground itself, which I find very odd, because if this area is supposed to be filled with water, I don't know why they just didn't let the natural ground be the same normal level and just like have like concrete like this. And it gets so ridiculous where like you have this metal grate that is also clipping directly into the ground. Like, I guess you could say it was buried into the ground, but obviously like it's just a straight line. There is like no blending between ground and metal. So yeah, it's just a little bit odd that like this geometry would be designed through the ground, as opposed to just letting the ground just be the natural like surface level. And then we don't have to open the gate. We'll just clip through here, and then we'll turn around. It's this one after this. We'll turn around and we'll discover our old friend, the ominous red light. And I don't know if this is consistent throughout the maps once we hit water hazard, but as far as I'm aware, this is the only one that I've seen that has been in this tunnel. I don't know why this is here, why it's on, who knows. But more odd is, as I mentioned before, these like open holes that I suppose allows rainfall to fall in it's just completely open rather than having a mesh. Because I'm going to assume that these are open this way so that people can like walk across them, but then like small debris can just like fall through, so it doesn't litter the ground. That's my best guess as to why this would be designed this way. So it being open is just kind of a hazard, more so than a water hazard, if you will. And then that's about it, because what I also discovered is this area will not load the next map into the transition unless I'm actually in the airboat, which is kind of interesting. So that is about it for D1_canals_05, and that is the end of the Route Kanal chapter. And that was that for D1_canals_05. As is paramount for me to do once I complete a chapter of Half-Life 2, I'm going to once again deviate a bit back into covering a map from TF2 as part of this series, which comes with it an announcement. Once I do complete the Odd Architecture video for the next TF2 map, Odd Architecture as a series will be put on hold to work on a much larger project I had slated to start in 2025, as I had done when I put the series on hold to make the Borderlands as a movie project. I have already set a lot of the groundwork for what will be my Tales from the Borderlands as a story project, but if I don't focus my efforts to solely that, will take much longer to complete, considering the Herculean task I have at hand. In regards to Odd Architecture, it won't be impossible that I'll find time to release an episode or two in lieu of me working on this bigger project, but more than likely the releases will be staggered more so than usual. As another aside to that, normally I'm not one to flaunt my Patreon unless it's in relation to these bigger efforts, but if you want to support me knowing that this project is somewhere around the corner and have liked this series, I'll have a link to my Patreon if you are so interested. I'll also clarify, as I usually do, that this Patreon is not meant to gatekeep content of mine, and the donation is a maximum of $5, merely as a way to show your gratitude for what I've made, what I've been making, and what I'll make in future. With that out of the way, I at least hope you enjoyed this mini-series thus far, and will hope to be interested in other projects of mine outside of it.